New content! Really, really fast. Thank you for being patient with me because of me uploading old videos with captions. I won't delete the old videos without captions because there's some really valuable comments on there. So again, thank you. But onto the new material. Let's talk about the major breakups. I'm not going into the minutia. And first on my list is the Philadelphia Church of God. When this old man, who looks like he's battling a migraine, finally kicked the bucket, there was a group that pretty soon split off because of the minute changes that were happening. They thought they were continuing exactly where he left off. And of course, a lot of legal battles followed. They have pretty much gained the copyright to all the old material. Their membership is around 3,000, which is pretty small compared to the UCG. But their broader scope of influence is pretty massive. That's what I'm going to talk about. The Philadelphia Church of God, Part 2. As I said before, they're basically a copy and paste of the old Worldwide Church of God. They have a beautiful main campus as well as some satellite campuses. Now, they wouldn't say it, but they do worship this guy. They would probably say they have a very strong reverence for him. They absolutely believe he was a prophet and a late apostle.
The work of Gerald Flurry and members of the Philadelphia Church of God is a continuation of Herbert W. Armstrong and the Worldwide Church of God. Mr. Armstrong began leading the True Church of God in 1931.
They also have a school for children, and their college is called Herbert W. Armstrong College. Because of course it is. But their membership is pretty small. So how do they have such a massive outreach? Archaeology. And they definitely feel validated. The Philadelphia Church of God, Part 3. Just as an aside, that soundbite actually comes from their introductory video on YouTube. Anyway, I talked before about how they made schools. And they just recently established the Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology. Guess where? If you guessed Jerusalem, you're right. And my knowledge of biblical Hebrew actually comes into play here because that down there means the stones cry out or the stones will cry out. Okay, enough of that for this video. The reason for this has to do with some pretty major findings that happened. I mentioned before about some of the archaeological discoveries. Yeah, they partook in the excavations, and they also massively funded them. But they cannot claim the sole credit. Instead, they partner up with other institutions. But hey, the excavations were cool, and they did get a lot of clout. The Philadelphia Church of God, Part 4. So what gives with the archaeological discoveries? Alright, well there's a bit of discussion about what they might have found. The whole thing behind it is a whole lot more. Just as it is with fundamentalist churches, in the Worldwide Church of God and all the offshoots, the whole concept of finding something archaeologically that potentially proves that something from the Bible did occur, basically that gives them the right to say, hey, we found this, we must have been chosen, and now we can prove that everything that we believe is right. Archaeology is amazing. I'm not saying that it's not. And Armstrongist churches are already pretty full of themselves. And stuff like this really gives them that extra punch to say, hey, now we can really bring people in. Which they probably can. The Philadelphia Church of God, Part 5. Oh, you thought I was gonna do... So what do they believe? Herbert W. Armstrong died in 1987. Under the new president, Joe Tkach Sr., things started to change. So the Philadelphia Church of God broke off. So essentially, today, it is basically 1987 to 1989 Armstrongist church. But with a flair! The founder, Gerald Flurry, is kooky. Just how kooky? He said he is the prophet. What prophet? The one the people were expecting. Well, what does that mean? In layman's terms, it means that he is the harbinger of doom. That's the interpretation, but the harbinger of doom. I clearly have a different interpretation, but he doesn't. The Philadelphia Church of God, Part 6. After a lot of legal battles, which I think is funny because they absolutely believe that you shouldn't use the law to go after one another. Although I'm sure they probably say something like, yeah, but that's outside the church that you can't. Anyway, they basically got access to pretty much everything that the old WCG had. Like this correspondence course. Yep, it's almost exactly the same, and it's also part of Herbert W. Armstrong College. Their auditorium is called Armstrong Auditorium, as opposed to the one in Pasadena called Ambassador Auditorium. All the material is essentially the same, as if it's like frozen in time. Yeah, there are alterations, but really very minimal. And just like the old WCG, they prophesy about the end times a lot. The Philadelphia Church of God, Part 7. So, we need to talk about something. The Worldwide Church of God started as the Radio Church of God. And the Philadelphia Church of God also has a radio station. And that is how Gerald Flurry and his relatives make messages to the broader public. Do you remember what Gerald Flurry said about himself? Let's see how far that goes. Just a few days ago, there was one called Donald Trump's Return in Bible Prophecy. December 29th, the end is nigh. November 30th, the war in 24. There's even one in 2015 called Terror in Egypt, Fulfilled Prophecy, God's Gift to You. Another in 2015, The German Empire is Back. 2019, Holding Back the King of the South. That's Africa.